Is this some kind of joke? Captain Reed's voice, sharp and laced with the condescending bite of youthful arrogance, cut through the quiet reverence of the museum annex. Katerina Sokolov didn't flinch. She was standing in the dimly lit, silent hall, an auxiliary wing of the Air Force Museum, currently restricted. The air was cool and smelled faintly of polished brass and old canvas. Katerina, a woman in her mid-40s, wearing a simple, elegant black suit, stood out sharply against the historical military exhibits. Her short, severe, jet-black hair and intense, pale green eyes immediately drew the captain's attention. Captain Reed, the officer of the day, strode toward her, his posture rigid with authority. "Ma'am, this hall is secured for the dedication ceremony. I need to see your credentialed visitor pass. And frankly," he added, letting his gaze sweep over her civilian attire with open disapproval, "I question your authorization to be in this area at all. You need to leave." Katerina ignored the captain's demand. Her gaze had locked onto a central display case dedicated to the Air Force Pararescue jumpers, PJs. Inside, a shredded harness and a damaged helmet lay beside a small bronze plaque detailing a highly classified mission, Operation Icarus. She walked slowly, purposefully, past the captain and stopped before the glass. Her intense, pale green eyes traced the details of the exhibit. She raised her hand, a strong, capable hand, and gently touched the cool glass directly over the plaque. It was a gesture of profound, silent connection. Captain Reed, seeing the personal depth of her attention, hardened his stance. "That's enough, ma'am," he said, his voice dropping to a suspicious low. "That exhibit represents a catastrophic classified operation. Your emotional attachment is inappropriate and raises serious security concerns. Are you related to any personnel involved in Icarus? I demand specifics." He demanded details, interpreting her silence as evasion rather than reverence. "You are failing to comply with a direct order," Captain Reed stated, stepping around her to block her path, his authority now fully engaged. "You are improperly credentialed in a secured facility dedicated to sensitive operational history. I am not asking for your story. I am asking for identification." He gestured sharply toward the display case. "Your behavior, touching the glass of a restricted memorial, suggests you are attempting to interfere with or potentially damage sensitive government property. I am officially accusing you of unauthorized access and interfering with a classified exhibit." Reed reached for his radio. "I am giving you one final chance, ma'am. Produce a valid military ID or an approved ceremonial pass right now, or I will initiate a security response and have you detained by the military police, MP, for trespassing and suspected vandalism. You will be held until we can verify your background. Your choice." Katerina ignored the captain's threat to call the MPs. Her pale green eyes, usually sharp, were suddenly distant, fixed on the glass case, but seeing something far deeper. She wasn't seeing the polished plaque of Operation Icarus, but the catastrophic moment itself. The cool, silent museum dissolved into the ear-splitting shriek of metal shearing apart. The air was a maelstrom of snow and smoke high in the mountains. Her own pave hawk had been hit, leaving her as the sole conscious survivor. She remembered the blinding flash of the crash and reaching out, her hand closing instinctively around a piece of jagged, bent material, a unique personal artifact from the shattered cockpit. It was the only thing she kept from that day that wasn't blood-stained. The memory was raw and immediate, but it did not break her composure. She maintained her unbreakable posture, the stillness of her body acting as a shield against the captain's frantic aggression. She stood there, silent, allowing the captain's rage to build against the wall of her utter calm. The silence from Katerina allowed Captain Reed's fury to reach a boiling point. But the confrontation wasn't happening in a vacuum. Across the hall, near the gift shop entrance, Chief Master Sergeant Vance, a seasoned NCO whose uniform carried the weight of 3 decades of service, had paused his inspection. He had initially dismissed the argument as a simple procedural check. However, as he watched the captain's aggressive posture meet the woman's absolute unmoving calm, His concern deepened. He didn't know the woman's name or her rank, but he recognized the unbreakable stillness in her compact frame, the way she held her chin, and the quiet intensity in her eyes. It was a stillness he had seen countless times, in PJs before a hazardous jump, in troops holding a position under fire. It was the posture of a combat veteran, not a civilian. He realized the captain was making a profound, dangerous mistake. Captain Reed had exhausted his professional patience and his threats. He reached the point of no return. "That's it, ma'am. You've forced my hand." He forcefully placed his hand on Katerina's shoulder, intending to physically turn her and march her out of the restricted area toward the MP checkpoint. The moment his hand touched her, Katerina's quiet defiance transformed into a calm, devastating command. She didn't struggle or raise her voice. She spoke with the clear, low authority of someone who gives orders that save lives. "Captain," she said, her pale green eyes locking onto his. "You are not going to call security. You are going to call your commanding officer, General Hayes, on his secure line right now." Reed flinched, not just because his physical action had been met with such firm resistance, but because she had ordered him to bypass the entire base chain of command and named the 4-star general who commanded the whole region. You don't get to dictate protocol. I don't call the general for trespassers." "Call him," Katerina repeated, the command absolute. "Tell him I need to speak to him immediately. If you choose to escalate to the MPs, I guarantee your next promotion will be your last." Captain Reed, unnerved by the woman's complete lack of fear and her specific knowledge of the general's name, pulled his hand back from Katerina's shoulder. His confidence was visibly shaken. He pulled out his secured phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he dialed the number for General Hayes's official aide. "This is Captain Reed," he barked into the receiver, trying to sound authoritative over the sudden panic he felt. "I have an incident at the museum annex. Unauthorized civilian, interfering with the exhibit." He paused, listening to the aide's clipped questions. "Yes, sir, she's demanding to speak to the general. Her name is Katerina Sokolov." On the other end, the general's aide, a major who had been casually sipping coffee, choked. There was a sudden, chilling silence. "Say that name again, Captain," the major commanded, his voice now stripped of all casualness, replaced by raw urgency. "Did you say Katerina Sokolov? What is her status?" "She claims she's just visiting," Reed stammered, bewildered by the aide's reaction. The major didn't listen. "High priority alert. Do not engage, Captain. Do not move her. Do you understand? I am initiating an immediate communication channel to the general right now." The phone line went dead with a decisive click, leaving Captain Reed staring at his phone, his face pale with dread. The tense silence in the museum annex was shattered by the sound of approaching authority. Before Captain Reed could even process the major's chilling response, the main security doors burst open. General Hayes, the 4-star commander of Air Combat Command, ACC, stormed into the hall. He was moving with a speed that belied his rank and years. His face was a mask of cold fury and panic. The general ignored the frantic Captain Reed, whose mouth was agape with terror. He walked with long, ground-eating strides, his eyes, intensely focused, cutting straight through the vast hall and the historical exhibits. General Hayes halted directly in front of Katerina Sokolov, his shadow falling over her small, powerful frame. He did not ask for the captain's report. He demanded an explanation only from the civilian woman who had caused the alert. "Master Sergeant," the general clipped, bypassing her lack of uniform and current status, using her former rank immediately. "Report! What is the status? I want an immediate, unfiltered assessment." General Hayes, without waiting for the captain's stammered explanation, immediately recognized the woman standing before him. The memory of her service instantly overshadowed her civilian attire. The 4-star general snapped to a rigid, breathtakingly perfect position of attention. He raised his hand to his brow and held a profound, solemn salute, a gesture of ultimate respect rendered to a woman in a simple black suit. "Master Sergeant Sokolov," the general stated, his voice ringing with authority, yet laced with deep reverence, the sound echoing through the silent hall. "It is an absolute honor to see you, ma'am. I sincerely apologize for the delay and the reception you have received." Captain Reed, watching his 4-star commander salute a civilian he had just threatened with arrest, felt the floor drop out from under him. He stood frozen, his face pale with a mix of terror and disbelief. General Hayes held the salute for a prolonged moment before lowering his hand. He turned to the captain, his gaze now filled with glacial disappointment, but addressed the entire hall. "Captain Reed asked who this woman is," the general began, his voice carrying the full weight of his command. "Allow me to enlighten you. This is Master Sergeant Katerina Sokolov, retired. She is the guardian angel of Operation Icarus." He gestured back toward the glass case Katerina had been touching. The tragedy represented in that display, the shredded harness and the destroyed pave hawk, is only half the story. Sergeant Sokolov was the sole conscious survivor of that crash. After her own helicopter was downed, she ignored her injuries, secured the wreckage, and spent the next 36 hours extracting the pinned pilot and fighting off enemy patrols. She is not a visitor to this memorial. She is the living subject of this exhibit. The reason that plaque exists is because of the impossible courage of this woman. General Hayes's gaze snapped back to Captain Reed, his voice cold and commanding. "Captain Reed, you asked for her credentials. You now know her rank is earned in blood, not promotion schedules." The general then changed his tone, addressing a small, private mission. "Master Sergeant Sokolov came here today for a private, solemn purpose, to place an artifact, a piece of her history, at the exhibit." He pointed sharply at the captain. "Captain, I know you detained her and searched her belongings. Retrieve the item she intended to leave. You will personally place that artifact on the Operation Icarus plaque." Reed, utterly defeated, fumbled with his uniform pockets, producing the small, jagged piece of metal, a fragment of the shattered helmet visor. The general took the fragment, his expression solemn. "This artifact represents the debt we owe her." He then addressed the museum personnel present. "Her name will no longer be relegated to a footnote. By my authority, Master Sergeant Katerina Sokolov will be formally recognized. Her name will be immediately engraved onto the main dedication plaque of this wing, alongside those she saved." General Hayes held the artifact for a moment, then handed it gently to the humbled captain. Reed walked mechanically to the display case and placed the jagged visor piece onto the plaque. The general turned, his voice resonating with power and gravitas, addressing Captain Reed and all assembled personnel. "Look at this display. You see a retired Master Sergeant in a civilian suit. Captain Reed saw an unauthorized civilian. This is a fundamental failure of judgment. I want every officer and NCO here to understand this lesson. You do not judge a warrior by the uniform she is not wearing. True authority is not granted by rank insignia. It is earned by sacrifice and competence. Master Sergeant Sokolov's status is etched into her history, not on her lapel. The moment you allow your perception, your bias, to override procedure and the truth of a person's service, you fail your command. Her sacrifice is the measure of service, and that measure transcends rank, attire, and prejudice." Weeks passed. The incident at the museum had become an immediate, highly classified cautionary tale. Katerina returned to the memorial hall on a quiet, sunny afternoon. She stopped before the display case. The small plaque detailing Operation Icarus was now mounted beneath a gleaming new dedication board. Her name, Master Sergeant Katerina Sokolov, was formally and prominently engraved upon it, honoring her as the guardian angel. She stood watching the dedication with a quiet sense of closure. A voice interrupted the silence. "Master Sergeant Sokolov." Captain Reed approached her, his uniform crisp, but his posture profoundly humbled. His youthful arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by genuine, uncomfortable humility. He held his service cap in his hands, unable to meet her gaze immediately. Ma'am, I saw the plaque, and I read the file. There is no apology that is adequate for my inexcusable lack of judgment that day. He finally met her intense, pale green eyes. I was arrogant. I was wrong. I let my ego insult your sacrifice. I am truly sorry. Katerina studied his contrite face. Your apology is accepted, Captain Reed. You made a fundamental error, but you came back to face it. She offered him a slight, professional nod. That takes courage. Now you must use that lesson. She offered him a lifeline. Mentorship. If you want to truly honor the service, you need to learn to look beyond the surface. Come find me when you're off duty. She turned to leave the museum hall. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, her encrypted military phone buzzed. A highly secure, dedicated ringtone. Katerina checked the screen. The message was terse. Guardian Angel, high priority. We have a crew pinned on the north slope. Protocol 1 is now active. You are needed on the flight line in 90 minutes. She confirmed the alert with a single, precise tap. The legend was not retired. The mission was ongoing. Pulling her coat tighter, Katerina Sokolov walked toward the parking lot, ready to step back into the shadow world. To hear more stories of courage, unique service, and the quiet professionals who serve in the shadows, subscribe to She Wore the Stars.